Okay, Luisa. So you stay there, Luisa. Okay. I'll invite you up in a second. Let me see, I've got to get my dates right. I met Luisa 2013. She wasn't in my first year studio. She was in Donna Danae's. You guys were on the 4th floor?
3rd floor.
3rd floor?
Yeah.
I was down on the 2nd floor where Andrew is at now. Catherine, I believe you were where I was at. And Luisa was always hanging out in my studio that fall. I had no idea who she was, but she had a lot of friends in that studio, and so she was down there talking with and doing projects with a lot of the students that were in my lab. Probably January of spring semester, her and a young man, Austin, you may talk about him in your lecture today, and a few other students, they came to me and they asked why we didn't have a design publication. Cornell has one, RISD has one, all of these other schools have a design publication, but we don't have one. Good question. So then they asked if they could start one. And it's like, go for it. I did not expect much. I put them in touch with a handful of our alumni. They got to interview PlayLab. Some of you may know who PlayLab is. They were just at the Grammys 2 days ago, 3 days ago. They were nominated for a Grammy for Best Packaging Design for Post Malone. Archie happened to be in Blacksburg. You guys got to hang out with Archie for a day. Jeff is coming in. Catherine has invited Jeff in. He'll be here later. Hopefully we can get him involved to meet with some of you guys. They interviewed some faculty. They interviewed 5th-year students. And then they reached out to this company, Vectorworks, and asked them for money with no proof of concept, no proof that they weren't going to squander that money. And Vectorworks gave you guys $1,000?
I think so, yeah.
They took all of that money and they printed this design journal, issue 1. And all of the photography was done by them, all of the writing was done by them, all of the layout was done by them, and they signed the lobby out for a day. And then they just gave these away to faculty, to students. The school director came to me, he has one in his hands, and he says, who did this? I pointed, like, my students did that. And he said, I'm gonna give you $5,000, do it again. This coming Friday, we released the 21st issue. So this is still going on. You participated in it for the next 3 years.
Yeah, 7 issues.
7 issues. Luisa was the design head for this. Pretty amazing. And it's one of the reasons that I remember her and I've kept in touch with her. She didn't ask permission. She didn't wait for me to tell her to do something. She saw an opportunity, she saw something that she was interested in participating in, and she made it happen. The other thing that really stands out about Luisa when she was a student, she ended up taking a class with me later. She took screen printing with me, and then she was interested in posters, I'm interested in posters. We started an independent study, and we would make stuff. And so I would come in and I would show the designers that I'm excited about. Next week, she would have researched those designers, but then she would come in with designers I had never heard of things that I'm not looking at, and it became a conversation. Like she didn't stop right there. She didn't just absorb, like she was willing to share all of the things that she was interested in. And I absolutely love that she would go to the library, she would get online, she would go to journals. She would bring in her packaging design from whatever CD or whatever, and she would show that and like, we're going to do something similar to this. And I think you're still doing that today. I'm not going to talk about too much what she's doing now. I'm going to let her discuss that. But can you guys please join me in welcoming Luisa Lacsamana?
Yay! Hi, everyone. I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you to Chris for inviting me back to speak to all of you foundation students. It's honestly like a huge honor for me to be here. I remember being in your seat 11 years ago, I think, and being like, oh, it'd be so cool if I could come back and speak to all the foundation year students. Because after I watched the Play Lab lecture, like that kind of changed the trajectory of how I viewed my time at Tech, and it kind of expanded the possibilities of what you could do here, and made me think in a more non-traditional way, because I saw these people doing some really incredible projects. And I was like, oh, I don't just have to stick to the major I'm in. I can do things outside of it. And that's sort of what I'm going to be talking a little bit about today. And I still feel like I'm pretty early in my career. So being able to share my story and journey means I'm doing something right, and it's really special. And yeah, so as Chris said, I am Luisa Lacsamana, and I am a graphic designer and artist. But bottom line is, I just like to make things. Like, I'm constantly doing things outside of work, doing a bunch of personal projects, and I don't really like being defined by just one title. I graduated here in 2017. Oh, whoa. And this is the class I graduated with. We had Ed Dorsa as our professor, who's now retired. And we took these photos of our class to do like a yearbook photo at the end of our thesis year. And I currently work and live in LA. I am a graphic designer in the music industry, and I work for Universal Music Group, designing stuff for, probably the biggest artists of today. I've done t-shirts for Billie Eilish, posters for the 1975, hoodies for Ariana Grande, Olivia Rodrigo, Anita, Metro Boomin, Kid Cudi, Role Model, just to name a few. But there's honestly so much more that just can't fit on this slide. And it's a really cool job, and unbelievable that I get to do this as a full-time, like 9 to 5, and get paid for it. And when you're a first year student, you kind of look at these people in these like successful or like crazy out of reach jobs, or what you think is out of reach. And I always had a question in mind, and it was, how did they get there? I grew up in Virginia. I was like, we go to school in like Appalachia. It just seems so far away from LA and New York. You're like, how are these people getting to work with these artists? And I'm sure you guys are also wondering how I ended up from industrial design doing graphic design full-time for the music industry. And the answer to that is to follow the music. And this seems kind of vague and abstract, but music can be applied to your life in whatever way you see it. It's the importance of paying attention to your interests and obsessions, and leaning into the things that you guys naturally gravitate towards, and incorporating that in your schoolwork or things separate from class. For me, it was music. It was a through line in a lot of the things I made, and it led up to me working full time in the music industry, and all the things I was making in my free time, like random fan posters, I guess you could say, eventually became my career. So before I talk about that, I kind of want to start on the early years of my life. I was born in the Philippines, and I moved to Virginia when I was 6, and I grew up in a super artistic household. My dad was a painter and artist, and I learned a lot about photography through him. And my mom was also very interested in the arts and design. She owned a gallery in the Philippines and worked various design jobs throughout my upbringing. And subconsciously, I was building my taste by just constantly being surrounded by it. And they were both very encouraging and always let me explore my interests. So I was extremely lucky to grow up in this environment, and they're actually with me right now. They came down to Tech with me. And during this time, I was being exposed to a lot of cool things on the early internet days. It's like all this like super colorful maximalist designs of people just exploring what you could do with a computer and making art with it. And personalization was a huge thing. there was a program called AOL Instant Messenger, which I don't know if you guys are still familiar with, but it was just like Instagram chat or whatever, but that's all you could do on it. And this was the first time I took design seriously. There was this little icon on the left where you could pick whatever lyric you wanted or whatever bands you wanted to showcase to kind of show your personality. And there was a website called iconator.com where you could download these files, these GIFs, and show your friends what you're interested in. It was 100 by 100 pixels, super, super low res. And there were lyrics of songs, pop culture. And my older family friend learned how to make them. And I was like, wait, can you teach me how to do that? And I found this screenshot from 2006. I don't know if you guys were born then, but she told me to download this program called GIMP, and it was this bootleg Photoshop to make them. And I honestly got obsessed. I would make these pixel moving graphics for my friends. They would be like, can you make me an icon for this band I like or this lyric that I like? And so that was my first introduction into graphic design and making things for other people. I would go into Font and download these crazy fonts and download font packs and texture packs and kind of just have fun with it. It was an evolution of MS Paint and KidPix. And as you can see, I have things of the Jonas Brothers and Panic at the Disco because I was super into them at that time. And then I would go to these meet and greets for these pop punk bands. I met All Time Low at my local Hot Topic mall, and I gave them a portfolio of all my graphic design works, with fan art with them, in hopes that they would hire me to do their merch. And I was just here, but nobody's hiring a 7th grader then, but I had big hopes. And in 8th grade, I went to this Jonas Brothers concert, and this was the very first t-shirt I designed. I can't afford the merch that they're selling, so I asked my mom to buy me this printer paper that you could iron on to your shirt, and I got on GIMP and kind of made this tour poster that it was one of one. I was the only one wearing this at their concert. So yeah, you can see, I was very much a part of the culture at that time. These are all my old photos from middle school and elementary school. And I was going to Warped Tour, collecting CDs, buying t-shirts, posters, AP magazine, and ingesting a lot of the culture and music and graphic knowledge of that time. But then came high school, and I started kind of gaining more interest in photography because I wanted to take the background photos for these icons instead of getting stock images online. So I kind of dabbled in that a bit, and I enrolled in our darkroom photography class. And I was also still super interested in music, and I was seeing kids my age get press passes to shows, and I saw that they would say that they would work for these press agencies and email the managers to get these press passes and get free access to the shows. So I did the same exact thing, and I started this fake media company called Absolute End Media, and we published these stories about these bands, talked about their upcoming tours, albums. I did the website design for this, and eventually I ended up emailing managers, and I got press passes, which was super sick. As a 9th grader, you're getting to shoot these shows. I got to shoot Fun. That was the very first show I shot. And if you guys know, Jack Antonoff used to be part of this band. And then I would go to local shows for pop punk bands and shoot them as well. That was kind of short-lived, and I stopped doing that in 10th grade. But during that time, I began to see photography as more of this art form, and it was very much the time of Tumblr and Flickr, where you see these girls in the woods running around and flower crowns. Rookie was a huge part of this too. It was an online cult magazine for teenage culture. And Tavi Gevinson, Petra Collins, like this is kind of where they got their start in. And it was a very cool community. They did DIY zines, scrapbooking, talking about their dreams, and just like it was a way to get away from suburban living. And same thing with Tumblr. It was a lot of like overlap between these different communities. So I did the same thing, and I spent a lot of time in high school, after school, going to the woods, taking photos of my friends, doing these concepts, and, like doing these conceptual photo shoots, and I really loved it. And at the same time, I was also making zines. I was part of my literary arts magazine, and we would design layouts. I learned how to use Illustrator in InDesign during those classes, and I was just exploring all the possibilities I could go with in art. I wanted to do it all. I would also design the t-shirts for the coffee shops we had. And I would make these music videos with my friends to the songs I like. This one is a song by Beach House, which I'm not going to play right now, but I even got in contact with our manager and I was like, hey, can I submit this to like a film festival? So it was cool just getting to like have some like connection to these bands that I was listening to, even if it was just through their manager and like making my art. And I spent 4 years thinking I would go into art school to do photography or cinematography, but I think I was going into senior year and I did a pre-college program at MICA, and for some reason I just didn't like art school, and I really thought photography was kind of self-serving, and I didn't really have, it was like not much I could do past like making these cool looking photos. I mean, photography is really great, and that was just like the way I thought in my 18-year-old mind, but I started thinking about other possibilities I could do in college. My dad was encouraging me to go into graphic design because that was sort of what I was always doing in the background, but I was like naively being like, oh, I could just learn that on my own. I mean, it worked out in the end, but honestly, it would have been beneficial to probably do some graphic design classes. But then I got interested in industrial design because my mom introduced me to Johnny Ives, and she was really interested in furniture, and it just seemed kind of like the path that made sense at the time. I really like learning about the design process and thinking through problems and using design as a way to solve these problems. So I applied to Virginia Tech and I got into the College of Architecture and Design. And I really love this school. I've had a lot of really amazing friends come out of this program, and I've had a really great community at Virginia Tech that I still talk to this day. But I kind of want to talk about the things I did outside of class. You know, I did a lot of my classwork and it was fun, but I spent a lot of my time after class doing a lot of personal projects. And the first one I want to talk about is Studio Collective, which Chris briefly mentioned at the beginning. So we were the second semester of our first year, sort of like where you guys are right now, and I was kind of feeling lost. I didn't fully feel like an industrial design student. I still kind of felt like I was an art kid trying to cosplay a designer. But during that time, my friend Christine Yen, who was in Chris's studio, asked me if I wanted to be part of this new design journal that her and a bunch of her classmates and friends in Chris Pritchett's studio were starting. And she knew I was interested in graphic design and invited me to meet with Austin. And after that, we clicked instantly. We talked about Flickr and Tumblr and all the photographers we followed. And I was so excited to finally feel like I belonged somewhere at Tech. And I found people who understood me and wanted to do things beyond just the class projects. And he told me the explanation for Studio Collective, and it was a way to, connect all the majors together, because eventually we would be separated in our own majors and doing our own projects. So it was a way to showcase all of the projects to other majors that we wouldn't necessarily be in contact with all the time. And, it's kind of crazy doing this as a first year student. It just goes to show, like, you shouldn't let your age or your experience stop you from doing things that you want to make, especially if there's a need for them. No one had done this before, and we didn't have a design journal, so we just decided to do it. And the first year, it was me, Austin Legend, Christine Yan, Kevin Garcia, and Stephen Good doing a lot of the foundation work of this journal. And I got to learn a lot about layouts. I headed the layouts department for the next few years, and we got to take a lot of photos, interview a bunch of really interesting people, and it really expanded our network at Virginia Tech and just beyond that as well. I also got to design a bunch of posters, which were fun, and we did some lobby exhibits, and I was a part of it for the first 7 issues. And I also want to say, like, I'm still so happy it's still continuing to this day, and huge shout out to Chris for always believing in it and keeping it going to this day. Like, it's insane hearing that there's like 21 issues now. We never thought that it would be this big as first year students. Like, we didn't even know it was going to be the official design journal. We were kind of just like making it. And just even like apart from, all of these like official things, the thing that I took most away from working on this journal was the community that I built. We pulled a lot of all-nighters, which I don't really recommend, but there's a lot of special moments that happen in those late nights. You form really close connections to your collaborators, and it's really cool working with people to make one end product. And I found the importance of finding people who push you. Austin was a really great leader. He would never settle for just good. He would always be like, it could be better. So that really pushed my design, and it really made the finished product look professional and to the highest of our abilities. And I also want to emphasize the importance of talking to people in other majors and being friends with them. It'll only make you more interesting. Like, we worked with not just architecture students, but there were landscape architectures, interior design students, industrial design students all working on this magazine. It helps not being siloed in your majors. And if you guys want to join, there's like an interest meeting tonight that I will also be there. So if you want to learn more about it, come through. But it was cool finding people who believed in you and made design exciting. Throughout college, I also did this poster a day series where I designed a poster a day for a whole year. And it was kind of like a way to do mindless sketches when I didn't want to do studio work, just getting ideas and forms going. And it really helped me get better at Illustrator and graphic design. And I would expand on that, doing these more thought out posters, which I then screen printed in Chris's screen printing class. I would also make Snapchat filters and just find any way outside of class to do graphic design. I would also make bootleg shirts for artists I liked at the time, not so much anymore. And I would sell these to friends. So t-shirts are also like a very constant thing in my design practice. And during my sophomore to senior year of college, I interned at this place called Alpha Industries. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them, but they were huge in 2016 to 2018. They were a bomber jacket company popularized by Rihanna and Kanye. And streetwear was at its peak. So being able to work here was like the coolest thing ever. And I got to design this custom jacket for Post Malone that we gave him in Coachella. And that was really like the first instance I had this like official connection to the music industry. And I somehow got connected to his creative team and started this like online friendship, or like maybe not friendship, but just like we started following each other online, which was like so cool to me at the time. And this was way more exciting to me than the idea of finding a job in industrial design. So by the time I was a senior, I was kind of conflicted. I had just spent 4 years at Virginia Tech, and I spent a lot of money in this major. And I was like, I don't really know what to do after this because I don't really want to be an industrial designer. But then I would read these stories of these fashion designers who got their start in industrial design. Raf Simons was one of them, Virgil Abloh, as you may know, who started in architecture and engineering, the designers at Common Projects. And there's honestly a lot of overlap with them now that I look back at it, but being able to see these people who kind of had a similar journey to me kind of solidified the next years and career decisions I would make. And during senior year, I watched Virgil Abloh's Harvard or Columbia lecture, and he said one really important thing in it. He said, I don't think I ever really thought I would practice architecture. I was there to learn about design. I like the idea of analyzing a program, thinking of a solution, and being able to defend it. But I think I always had the sense to internalize that method and apply it somewhere else. And hearing that, I was like, that is exactly how I feel. And I feel okay now about, moving on from what I had just studied. My heart was really set on following the music and working on things I actually wanted to make. So hearing this guy who was like ultra successful say that was really important. And my first week of senior year, my friend had asked me, like, what do you want to do when you graduate? And I was like, design merch, not knowing it would eventually end up being a full-time job for me and not even knowing that there were opportunities like this. So the next 6 years were kind of crazy. It was not a straight line into getting into the music industry. I tried to find any path to get my foot in the door, and even with the one connection I had through Post Malone, it didn't necessarily guarantee that I was gonna be getting consistent work from it and doing it full time. And music honestly doesn't make a lot of money if you're a freelancer, so it's hard to consistently be doing it as just like a side gig. But I eventually kept going at it, and I got to where I needed to be. So the next few slides are kind of about that. I started my full-time job at Alpha Industries after college, and I got hired as a graphic designer doing email newsletters, social media posts, social assets, and miscellaneous graphics. I lived one exit away from it in Centerville, Virginia, and it was crazy to think that this like huge streetwear brand was just down the street in suburban Virginia. And one of the coolest projects I got to work on while I was there was at ComplexCon. And if you guys are familiar, ComplexCon is this convention of the biggest streetwear brands showcasing their new lines. And during my team meeting, they showed us our booth. I knew I had the skills of using CAD, and I spoke up and I was like, I can make this better. And, they were just like, sure, whatever. Like, I was hired as a graphic designer. I really had no place in designing the space for them. But I ended up doing that. I ended up doing it. So I designed these mock-ups using the materials we had from another convention and kind of merchandising it out. This was me at our final booth at ComplexCon. Pretty simple, but it was effective and it cost effective as well. And I got to meet Ray Kawakubo, who is the head of Comme des Garçons. I saw Virgil DJ there, and I watched him give a lecture, and that was kind of like a full circle moment for me. And the day-to-day was kind of boring. I was just doing a lot of marketing, graphics, and social assets, but it was still a cool opportunity. And I want to go back to the connection I made during my internship there. So I got connected to his design team consisting of Brian Rivera and Travis Brothers. And I asked Brian how he got started in the music industry. And he emailed me back saying he did the exact same thing as me. He would email these designers and creative directors that he liked. And eventually he made a post asking for an intern, and I hit him up, and because we had this previous connection through Alpha, he offered me the internship position. And you know, a lot of the time it was just getting to update tour posters, working on tech packs, editing things for clients, but it was the first time I had ever worked in the music space in this capacity. It was the coolest thing to me ever, and I would go to Alpha Industries from 9 to 5, and then I would go home. Brian would hit me up and be like, do you want to work on XYZ? And sometimes I would be working till 2 a.m. just working on all of these projects for him. It was a lot of small things, you know, kind of just like intern tasks that you would do, but I got to contribute to a lot of the Beer Bongs and Bentleys rollout, which was very exciting to me at the time. He hit me up and he asked me if I wanted to design this dragon that was going to be used for a logo, and then eventually it made its way onto single packaging, some merch that they had, and like even the album. I also designed some of these like borders that you would find kind of in construction workbooks or instructional packets that they use throughout their packaging as well. And it was really cool getting to work with Brian because he would just give you these files, his like Photoshop files, and you could see kind of how he broke down his design. I would turn on and off layers and kind of like mess around with how he got to the end product. So that was also really huge for me because at this time I was only using Photoshop for photography. I didn't realize it could be used as a graphic design tool. I was only using InDesign and Illustrator for that. So I was learning as I went, and it really opened up huge possibilities for me of what I could do with graphic design. I also got to work on alternative type lockups for Kali Uchis. I didn't make it into the final cover art, but I designed a lot of iterations of the letter T, but she ended up just going with the original one. And I worked on merch pieces that got rejected, so I can't really share it. But just being able to design merch for these huge artists, like, you know, you can't believe it. And I got to work on vinyl packaging for this. And then I designed my first official tour poster for Justine Sky. And I was like, whoa, like a ton of people are seeing this. It's not just like the people in my school or my friend circle. And yeah, it was just really cool. But when I was working with Brian, I felt that he was light years ahead of me. He was this kid my age, but he was, you know, doing these really big projects. And I really wanted to push myself and learn more about graphic design, typography, and layout. So I started this series called Mood Board, and board spelled Bored. And it was just what I would do in my free time, kind of pushing the limits of Photoshop and trying to make it more sophisticated than just those vector graphics I was doing earlier in college. There was a lot of experimentation, playing with typography, and I was just amazed at what I could do. I didn't really know I was capable of making posters like this. And this was just a self-initiated project because I felt the need of improving. And also during this time, I did this really special project with my friends Natalie and Elizabeth. Us three had met in the industrial design program, which is why we named the project Plastic Shop, obviously named it after the plastic shop downstairs in Burchard. And we were talking about the possibilities of our lives outside of college. You know, I was 1 year out of college and not really sure what to do still. We had vision talks, and eventually we got to talking about if we should start a project that involved our interest in music. And we came up with the idea of creating a mini docu-series about women working in the music industry as a way to empower and inspire others by sharing their story. In reality, we were also looking for some answers for ourselves. So I decided to quit my job at Alpha Industries because I finally felt like I reached the limit of what I could do there. And I didn't really feel like I was growing as a designer anymore. And I embarked on this road trip. And you know, your 20s are kind of a way to explore. I was also very fortunate that I had financial stability because I was living with my parents when I was working for Alpha. So I was able to figure out what I really love to do and kind of explore these different outlets. This is us three in front of the car that we took on the road trip. It was my 2002 Toyota Camry, which I still drive to this day. And we set on this journey from Blacksburg, Virginia, all the way to LA, and then all the way back in the span of a month, which is honestly really tiring now thinking about it, because we also had to film these women, photograph them, conduct these interviews, and drive the next day. But we interviewed a bunch of really amazing women. And in order to raise money for this project, we sold t-shirts that were kind of a play on like road trip imagery and these like shirts that you would see at the gas station. So Elizabeth thought of the idea of flat earth pancakes, and I decided to make a shirt out of it. And then we made a shirt with the car that we were using and took these fake advertisements from National Geographic and kind of recreated them to fit our project. So during this trip, we got to interview artists like Coco from Coco and Claire, Kelsey Bulkin, Avalon, but the biggest one was Megan Thee Stallion. And this was way before, this is maybe like a year or two before she kind of blew up. But, we just emailed these people and we were like, hey, can we interview you? We're going to be in your state. And they were super down, just taking that first step. And, you never know what could happen just by emailing people. I'm just going to play this short clip from the video series that we had, but it's about Megan talking about being a woman in the music industry. Oh, I guess there's no audio connected to this. Is there? Let me see if I can connect it. Maybe I'll just play it from my laptop.
You just need to realize.
Can you guys hear that? Okay.
So little. You just need to realize. It's so many of us coming up. Like, if we probably gave each other more attention, more positive attention, then it would start becoming normal that females are doing music. So then it would be like, okay, well, yeah, let's just link up, girl, and let's put it together so we can show them women are starting to take over. But it's a process. We're gonna get there eventually. We're gonna figure out the formula how to get there.
Yeah, so it's really cool listening to that now, knowing that she has Grammys, and Doechii just won Best Rap Album and is the third woman to ever do so. So the industry is definitely changing, and it was really cool to see as someone who's a person of color trying to break it into this really male-dominated industry. This is just a video of me and Megan Thee Stallion. I was so much shorter than her, but my friends were talking about how short I was. So after this project, I was kind of okay, now what? I need to find a real job. I'm not getting paid to just cut these videos and edit them and put them onto YouTube. I wasn't also getting jobs from this at the time. So I had talked to my friends and I was like, what if we all moved to LA and kind of just start working and living there? And it was kind of a pipe dream, but I didn't realize that what was going to come out of it. And in March 2019, I took a risk and moved to LA. I had gotten accepted at an internship at Sidley, and I was working as a full-time graphic designer prior to this, so taking an internship was kind of a step down in a way, but it was super beneficial because it was in Los Angeles. The pool there is so much more competitive, and I was like, this is just a way for me to get my foot in the door and kind of get the ball rolling and figuring out how I can get into the music industry. And the next 6 years were kind of crazy, or I guess the next 4 years were a little crazy. It wasn't a straight path into the music industry. I was working jobs in ad agencies, on and off freelance jobs, working at apparel companies, Merrill, if you guys are familiar with that, working at media companies for Gen Z fashion brands. But ultimately, the goal was to find my way back into the music industry. And I was also notorious for like never staying at a job for longer than a year, which I don't recommend. But it really gave me the insight of what I knew, what I liked and what I didn't like. You know, I knew the benefits of working freelance versus agency versus in-house. And during this time, I was still putting in the work on my personal projects because I needed a portfolio with the work that I actually wanted to do versus the work I was doing at my 9 to 5. So I tried to work on album art direction, creative direction for smaller artists, merch drops. Some small indie fashion brands would hit me up and be like, "Can you design a merch for us?" And I was like, "Yes, I can." And I said yes to everything because I still had the energy to do so. I hit up these YouTubers and I would use social media assets for them and an online ebook about traveling, which was cool as well. Austin Legend, who I'd worked with in Studio Collective and was like a really close friend of mine, worked at this company called Natalist, and he asked me if I wanted to do this publication about pregnancy, and I worked with him on this, which was like throwback to my Studio Collective days. I also worked on a lot of single art for indie artists, friends of friends, people who would hit me up on the internet. And I got more practice using Photoshop through that. I also got to work on a poster for Ravina and this poster for Tink. And then just more local shows that I would do. And I got to do this rollout for an artist named Nessa Rika doing all of her single art. And eventually I got to do her CD packaging, which was the first CD packaging I'd ever worked on. Someone else who found me through mutuals in the graphic design community asked me to work on an artist he was managing named Dan Atta. And I did more single artwork and the EP artwork for that. And I even got to work on lyric videos. So I had never designed or, made a lyric video prior to this, but it was kind of an extension of all the little icons I made as a 5th grader, but just in like a full video form. And I learned how to use After Effects. A lot of the times I would just say yes to things, even though I had no experience doing them. And in the end, you just figure it out. I also got to work on album typography for the artists I met during the Plastic Shop road trip, and photo shoots and album covers for other artists. I also designed logo treatments that ended up showing on their stage at Gov Ball. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Between Friends, but they're this like really cool indie pop band of siblings, and I did these other logos for them that showed up in their music videos. And during this time, I also was screen printing in my small apartment in LA and doing clothes. And I wanted to kind of expand this into my own brand, and I named it Image Catalog. And it was just a way for me to do these like very limited drops of merch items with lyrics on them. So this is kind of like an extension of the mood board series where I would take lyrics of songs and make them into posters, but now I was making t-shirts with them. And this was a t-shirt made from lyrics from the Microphone song, The Moon. And I made packaging, stickers, and sent them out to everyone who bought them. I did a whole lookbook photo shoot with my friends to promote it. I also made this Bon Iver shirt that I had in a dream just because I felt like it. I also did some texture explorations just to see how I could further my Photoshop knowledge, and did more mood board images, posters, and just like random things. So the next turning point in my life was doing this music video for my now friend Boomy Jin. It was kind of random. I knew she had songs that she was releasing and I really, really loved them. So I offered her a music video just for a flight to SF, and we did everything ourselves because we had no budget. I learned how to make music video treatments. We did the styling. We did the location scouting. I edited all of the videos and color corrected them. And in the end, we came up with this really cool project. And this was a turning point in my life because I had realized that it was so fun to make things with the people I loved and things that I actually cared about. I was working at this ad agency at this time, and it kind of felt very stifling. You know, I was in the last years of my 20s, and I realized that music is really what I loved, and I still hadn't made it in the industry I'd moved to LA for. I felt exhausted. I was doing these pitch decks, and the work that I was doing never got to come out because like the pitches would get rejected, and it was very much like corporate branding and not aligned to what I wanted to do. So I decided to quit that job and kind of take the next year to figure out what my next moves were. Once again, super privileged thing to do. Maybe not the most financially sound decision also living in LA, but I had saved a ton of money from this one freelance job I got and ended up being able to pay for that next year. And my friend Jin hired me to do the whole rollout of her EP packaging, and we kind of developed this design language that carried throughout all of her album covers that dealt with nostalgia and heartbreak and love, but we also wanted to have this kind of futuristic edge to it. We did the photo shoots ourselves. I took the photos, I did the creative direction, I did the graphic design, and I designed the merch. You know, we had no budget, so you kind of wear all these hats yourselves. And these are just some BTS photos of the photo shoot and her EP release party. And once again, no matter the budget or whatever, it's always just so much fun making things with your friends. I would much rather have done this than like the job I was getting paid to do. I got to do this vinyl packaging for an artist named Ari, and we played a lot with the idea of fragments, depth, water, cycles and patterns and rawness. And we did a lot of analog things with the art. I scanned a bunch of textures in, played around with the transparencies, edited it because I just didn't want to be in Photoshop all day. And eventually I got to design the entire magazine for this London-based company called Wave, and it was based in fashion, music, and culture. And this was through a connection I had made at one of my other jobs. So it helped kind of jumping from job to job because you kind of meet all these people who connect you in the future. But this was insane. I just started as this graphic designer for Studio Collective, doing things for the school, and eventually ended up making this magazine that was being sold in stores in London. And this is me last year. I visited Christine Yen, and I took a photo with the magazines in the store, which was like the coolest thing to me at that time. And I also designed this zine, just doing explorations, kind of figuring out why I love design again, and why I started this in the first place. And I held a zine event with all of my friends, and we had these little booths and sold our artwork. And nobody had been inviting me to zine events because I wasn't really part of the art community in LA. So I just decided to throw one myself. And building communities with the people that are in your circles is honestly way more important than trying to befriend like this art director that's doing these like crazy things. Like, build with the people that are your peers, because then you can all come up together, and like it's way more special that way. So after this, I decided I really needed to get another full-time job because I was running out of my savings, and I went on LinkedIn and applied for this position at Universal Music Group, just like the online portal that you would apply to, very general, and thousands of people are applying there. And I was like, whatever, I don't think I'm going to get it because like there's no way they're going to see my portfolio. But one day this girl posted or reposted someone's post that was like bravado looking for a designer. And I was like, wait, this is a position I applied for. Let me find the person who posted that and find them on LinkedIn and message them. So that's exactly what I did. I went out of my way and like got to the creative directors and messaged them directly to kind of make my way out of this like pool of applicants. And eventually I got to talk to the senior vice president of the department I was applying to, and we just instantly clicked. We bonded over our love for Brain Dead and music and just being yourself and showing your personality. And they obviously really liked the work that I did, which consisted of all the personal projects I just showed you. Like, a lot of it was not client work. A lot of it was just work that I was doing for my friends, for small indie artists. Like, it wasn't these big names, but that was the work that they showed, that they liked and that they resonated with. So the next few slides are just going to be talking about my time at Universal Music Group and Bravado. I still try to take my time with a lot of the work I get to do there. I try to do a lot of my designs with hand-done methods, like handwritten type, making cyanotypes, scanning in drawings, just to kind of slow down and really think through everything that I'm doing. And there's so much merch out there and so many clothes that just get thrown out into landfill. So making it count and making the thing that you're doing beautiful, as always. Don't just think of it as I just have to do this job, let me just check it off a checklist. Really take your time and put care and intention and attention into it. And rejection is also a huge part of this job. These are just some of the things that I've designed that got approved, but a lot of the times you design it and they won't pick your artwork, or they'll make you redo an entire deck, and you kind of just have to build that. You have to build a tolerance for that, because you put in these hours and then you have to start over, but you kind of get your reps in, and it starts to hurt less as you go on, and you kind of move on from it and just get to work onto the next thing. You can't really stop. It's a constantly moving machine. You have to keep making things. And it's a job where I really love my coworkers. It's like being in studio again. Collaboration is a huge part, and I no longer felt like I was working in a silo like I did working on these other freelance jobs. It was great getting to find a community of graphic designers who were also doing the same thing as me, and getting to work in the same studio as them. It was really everything I wanted in a job. And it's crazy thinking about that I was just making these fan art posters a few years ago, and now it's the official merch for these artists being sold to thousands of fans, which I also am. I'm always a fan of these people too, so I know how important it is to the fans. And I just want to talk about some of the projects I got to work on. I got to do this hoodie for Kid Cudi's show in New York City, and my background in streetwear really helped me design this. And it was the first thing I had ever done 1 month into the job. And that really gave me the courage to keep going at it. And I got to design these hoodies for Ariana Grande, for Eternal Sunshine, this limited t-shirt for her as well. I got to design the YouTube exclusive Coachella hoodie and t-shirt for Kid Cudi. I also worked on the merch for Billie Eilish's Hit Me Hard and Soft, and I used the process of cyanotypes, and I printed these negatives, went outside, exposed them to the light. It was a very hand-done process because I wanted to take time with her merch, and it looks like it was hand-done, which is honestly really cool. This is her wearing the shirt. I also did things for Gracie Abrams' Secret of Us tour. I did this poster for the 1975, and I took my early influences of the 2000s culture and included these DDR arrows in it because it was for the show in Berlin, and Berlin's known for their rave scene, so I kind of wanted to incorporate that in some way and incorporate part of their stage design, which was the stairs that you see in the middle of the poster. I also got to work on this hoodie for Blink-182 that was being sold at their tour last year. It was the first time I'd also seen people wear hoodies that I had made in real life, which was a cool experience. And this was a full circle moment. This was me in 7th grade meeting Tom DeLonge. It was a meet and greet for Angels and Airwaves, but this music was so important to me in middle school, and now I was getting to actually work with the bands that made them. And the picture of me holding up the Alt Press magazine, Blink-182. I got to work on artists that I previously worked on before. So finally, my graphics for Cali Uchis were finally approved from my time at Brian's, where I was just making random things. And now I got official merch approvals. And I also, apart from just doing graphic design, I get to art direct and lead these collections for TwitchCon and role models. So TwitchCon is really cool because you get to work directly with their team, and it's a very collaborative process. And it's awesome because I get to hire my friends who I'd been longtime internet mutuals with, and I finally get to work with them and pay them. So that's awesome. And these are two jerseys and shorts that I really love from that collection. And as I said before, I lead an art direct for the merch line for Role Model. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he opened up for Gracie Abrams and is huge on TikTok now. And it's cool because sometimes you get to meet with the artists and be in these rooms with them at Interscope or whatever label, and collaborate with them directly. He has a lot of ideas, so it's a very cool process, just being able to take his ideas and make them a reality. And sometimes the things that I make get rejected, so I'll turn it into posters for myself that I can just post online. But the most exciting projects that I've gotten to work on were for Olivia Rodrigo. This was a t-shirt design or a hoodie design I did for one of her retail hoodies. And it's really cool because, she's this Filipino-American artist who I probably would have seen myself in if I was younger, and getting to make these t-shirts and hoodies and posters for girls that are also Filipino who are, 6 years old, high schoolers maybe, who want to be like Olivia is a really big accomplishment for me. I got to do the official poster for her Tokyo show, which got turned into t-shirts, and it was the front of the Harajuku store pop-up. It's insane because I was looking at these Harajuku fashion when I was in high school, looking through Fruits magazine, and having my art actually be in Tokyo. Also another full circle moment. I got to do the LA poster for Olivia Rodrigo and do the Complex exclusive t-shirts, which she is posing with in this picture. But I think the most special project I got to do for her was her Live in Manila show. It was the first time she had ever been to the Philippines. And she's half Filipino, and this is where her dad's family was from. So, being this little girl from the Philippines, moving to America and then moving to LA to design these posters for the biggest pop stars in the world, especially someone who looks like you, is just amazing and unbelievable. And I never thought I would make it to this moment. So I think this is all to say, you guys are all still foundation students. I encourage you to keep following the music throughout your college careers and beyond. Take every opportunity you can learn outside of class. It's a never-ending path of knowledge that even I'm still on. I still take freelance gigs. I still do these mood board posters whenever I have the chance, because it's not enough to just make art during work. I still want to explore. And now more than ever, you're able to use this time to take risks. You don't have to wait for the opportunity, like Chris said, to get the okay to start something if you believe there's a need for it, even if the need is just personal fulfillment. Be sure to collaborate with others and don't work in silos. Go talk to the other majors in studio. Go talk to the other majors in the college. You'll be a more interesting person with a wider point of view. And pay attention to what you do in your free time. The past interests will eventually become relevant in your life again. And be intentional in everything you do. Everything is compounding knowledge and skills. So the longer you go at it, the better you will get. And before you know it, the things that you want to achieve may not seem as out of reach as you initially thought. But most of all, don't forget to have fun and make memories. Design isn't everything. And yeah. Thank you.